Hello and welcome to Ilona Meets the Author. This podcast explores how authors create a world that we can escape into. Join me as we demystify the magic that keeps us turning the page. Hello and welcome to Ilona Meets the Author. Today I'm speaking with Ilona Bannister about her third novel, Five. Five is not like any other novel I've read. It's a fast-paced, urgent, entertaining, psychological thriller with fascinating, flawed characters. The book touches on some of life's heavier themes. It's very funny at times, sad at others, thoughtful and surprising throughout. We have five strangers waiting on a suburban London train platform. In 5 minutes, one of them will get hit by an oncoming train and die. They don't know this, but the reader does. In fact, the author has broken down the proverbial fourth wall, so we, the reader, know a lot about the characters, thoughts that they wouldn't necessarily want us to know, their innermost thoughts. At first, we see them superficially, a mother trying to control her energetic 6-year-old son, a handsome, smug businessman, an unfriendly older woman, and a young, attractive man in a burgundy pinstripe suit with a red wine and orange-colored knit scarf that somehow works. We, like a lot of commuters, make snap judgments about these people. But then the author takes us directly into the lives of each of them. We see disability, abuse, addiction, narcissism, and trauma. And then we return to the platform and watch the action there, minutes ticking into seconds. Who will it be? Who will die? The author asks the reader who they choose and what that says about the reader. There are a lot of moral dilemmas in this book. Life is layered. People are complicated. Don't be so quick to judge. Try to be kind instead, the author seems to be saying. I'll try and have no spoilers in this Q&A. And so, hello, Ilona. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. And thank you so much for that introduction. It's great to be here.
Oh, good. It's really just such a good book. So before I get into my questions, I'd like you to think, and then I'll ask you about this at the end, if you were going to turn it into a film, who would you like to play those five characters?
Okay.
Who knows? Maybe it'll actually happen. So I listened to a podcast where you said that the seed for Five came from two moments. One, when you were sitting on a double-decker bus in London, and you were wondering about the strangers and their lives and how interesting their lives would be if you got to know them. And then learning not too long after maybe about a cyclist in your neighborhood who got hit and died. So my question is, when did you realize that those two thoughts belonged in the same book?
Well, I had, and this doesn't happen to me often, but I did have sort of a lightning bolt moment. It was actually when I was sitting on that bus because I knew that the accident had happened also in that week. And I was on the bus because I was coming back from meeting with my agent. And I had brought my agent a completely different story. And she's a real straight shooter. And she told me right away that she didn't like it. So the whole reason that I was sitting on the bus thinking about human stories was because I was thinking, what am I going to do next? And I think that, the cyclist and what had happened had sort of been weighing on my mind in the background. And then I was on the bus and I was looking at the people around me. I'm a big observer, like most writers are. I'm always people watching. I'm always looking at what they're doing, thinking about what they're saying. And it hit me. And I think I may have even emailed her literally that day when I got home. Like, how about this idea? So it kind of came from a moment of, I was really worried because an idea I had didn't work, but
right.
It's one of those things. I believe very strongly that your subconscious, your creative subconscious will always find an answer for you. It just might not be apparent at the moment you need it, but your subconscious will come through. And I feel like I had one of those moments. I don't know if I'll ever have that again, but I definitely had one of those moments.
And then you've written 2 books before that were literary fiction. At what point did you know you wanted to make this a psychological thriller?
I don't think it was a conscious choice at first. I don't write with a plan or an outline or an agenda. I knew I wanted to write a book that was more accessible to a wider audience. I think my other books were very female-driven. They were very much about motherhood. People loved those books, and I appreciate those readers so much. But I didn't have the same kind of reach that I wanted to have to talk about the things I wanted to talk about. One of the things I knew that I wanted to do was to include more men, because I didn't really write about men before. So including male characters was a challenge for me. But I also knew that by widening it and making it a broader story, I thought hopefully I can reach more readers this way. And I didn't realize until I started thinking about what these people were doing on the platform and how it was going to work, that, oh, this is a thriller. It hadn't even occurred to me that was the space for me. And that's when I started doing a real deep dive in just reading every thriller I possibly could, every author I possibly could, from the classics to the modern day. I just dove into true crime podcasts, and I have just lived there habitually, listening to all the human stories that I could to learn how to do suspense. And I'm really pleased because I found that actually the sort of darker elements of the stories I write really have a home in the world of thrillers.
Yeah, all those questions.
Yeah. Feedback I would get before was that, oh, the stories are sad or they're dark. But when you're reading a thriller, you're coming there specifically because you know there will be something dark and twisty there. So I think that maybe this suits me as a writer.
Nice. And how did you come up with the 5 characters that you came up with?
So I knew for sure that there had to be a mother and child, because I think any parent universally has had the experience of being in public with a child misbehaving and feeling the judgment or the empathy, because both do happen. And particularly if you happen to have very active, rambunctious children. Both my sons have ADHD. When they were young, they were absolutely lovely and a joy, but they were very energetic. And I think you get people who look at you with disdain and people who look at you because they've had that experience too. So I think that mother-child experience I knew had to be part of the train platform. I wanted to have an older woman, Mrs. Worth, she's 78, because I think in public, older people can be overlooked. They can be seen as a nuisance. They can be seen as in the way. I think older women in particular don't have a great deal of visibility in society. So I knew that I wanted an older woman who was going to be really difficult, but have an extraordinary life that actually meant a lot to all of us. Of course, we had to include a business alpha male with a lot of swagger and cologne who just takes up the oxygen. We always need one of those, especially on his way to a place like London. And then Sunny, I think particularly because this train is going to London, you always find there will be someone in the mass of commuters who piques your interest. They're wearing something cool. They look a little different. There's something about them that's interesting, and they catch your eye because most of the time we don't notice the people around us, especially if you're doing something like commuting in the morning, which is why the 3 witnesses are there, and they're kind of nondescript because they represent sort of the people we don't see, whereas Sunny is someone who stands out. You notice him because so often we don't notice people.
Perfect. That's great. So they're 5 very realistic people that you might see on a platform.
Yeah,
easily.
I wanted them to be people you would recognize. If you're someone who commutes this way, I wanted you to recognize these people.
Yeah. Now, just because the style of your book is so individual and unique and terrific, can you read a passage from the start, probably?
Yeah, I'll read from the very beginning just to sort of set the scene, because I think the first page sort of gives you the insight into what we're doing.
If you're enjoying this, please do hit subscribe wherever you're listening. It's usually just a button on the screen, and it means new episodes come straight to your inbox. It also really helps the show grow, which means more conversations like this one. Right. Back to the show.
7:01. Someone will die here this morning at this suburban train station. It will happen in the next 5 minutes when the 7:06 to London Victoria arrives. 4 others have died here previously. In 1861, an alcoholic mourning his dead wife and child in a stupor of grief. In 1923, a World War I veteran suffering from shell shock, bombs exploding in his head until his last breath. In 1972, a teenage girl, unmarried and pregnant, forced to leave home by her parents. In 1994, a seeing eye dog who gave its life to save its owner when he stumbled perilously close to the tracks at just the wrong moment. At least 2 of these deaths were accidental. One was intentional, and one seemed intentional but wasn't. But they will not be described here in great detail because we have only a few minutes before the train arrives. And there is a great deal yet to discuss, and a 5th death to witness that may or may not be deliberate. It will be hard to tell when it happens. Turn your attention now to the stairs descending to the platform. A small child struggles out of his mother's grasp. He shrieks. He bolts toward the tracks. He looks over his shoulders and sees his stricken mother running. He laughs and trots to the edge of the platform. He turns around to face her, his back to the platform edge and the tracks beneath it. He does not realize he has crossed the yellow caution line. Even if he does realize it, he is too young to understand the yellow line's warning that another step back will be too far. He steps. He loses his footing, and the platform disappears underneath him. He looks at his mother. As he begins to fall, he meets her eyes, and in them he sees something he does not yet have the words to name. It is not anger or fear. It is hesitation. It would be easier if I lost him, is the thought she thinks for a sliver of a moment, a granule of time. 39 hundredths of a second, to be precise. Pause here for a moment. Please do not judge this mother for having this thought. Thoughts like these come to all mothers. They are involuntary. Sometimes they appear precisely because they are the opposite of what the mother truly thinks. The mother's anxious, exhausted brain plays a sinister game with her. It makes her think that she will say and do things that she would never, ever say or do. A mother's brain, knowing how much she loves her child, tortures her with that love, inverts her love, turns it inside out with horrible, haunting thoughts of terrible things that she would never do and that will never happen to her child. So please, do not think badly of this mother for having this thought in this moment. It is her thoughts that come after it that should concern you.
Thank you. Very good. Very good. Now, you've said earlier that you don't outline, that voices come to you, and which is fantastic. But I'm just wondering, how do you keep it all so tight? Because you've got 5 characters, 5 storylines. How do you keep the structure so tight with these voices and no outline?
Yeah, well, it was a challenge, and it was not a very efficient process. And what ended up happening would be that I would write a platform and someone would pop out to me as the story to tell, and I would tell their story. And depending on what was happening in their story, I would realize, oh, we actually need to change the interaction that came before. We actually need to shift how they're speaking to that person. So I would do a lot of, 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And that was very time consuming and difficult. And it would have been great to have an outline. But for me, one thing for me was the urgency and the pace of the story. I felt very strongly that when we were on the platform, things had to move very quickly and they had to be very spontaneous, because if you were standing on the platform, you wouldn't know what was going to happen next. And for me to write that kind of spontaneity, I also have to not know what's going to happen next. And I find that I always have the best ideas when they're actually happening spontaneously rather than sort of thought ahead of time.
Right.
So it was a very inefficient process of lots of going forward and backward. But for me, that's what makes the platforms, I think, feel authentic and plausible, like they could actually be happening. And then I would just go and make adjustments to the characters as I needed to, depending on the action that was happening. And when it became apparent who was going to die, I would adjust things again. But I did not know until the ending myself what was going to happen. But I think...
Oh, seriously? So you didn't know who was going to die until the end?
No, I didn't start off with the intention of who it was going to be. I wanted to see what was going to unfold. I think in my subconscious, there is a plan. But
right.
In the past, whenever I've tried to write things down or to organize them or to follow a structure, inevitably a character will say, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. And my whole plan then goes out the window. So I've learned to just sort of follow intuitively what would happen among these people rather than, in our real lives, we can't plan every moment of our interactions. So I feel like with my characters, I know who they are and I describe them. I give them interior lives. I construct them, but I need them to actually be interacting for me to make them feel real. That's how it works for me.
So you know them really well before you start.
Yes. Yeah, I know them. They have whole families. I get very into their backstory because I think a person's backstory has so much to do with why they make the decisions they do in the present, all the history they carry with them. So, these characters become very real to me, but to make the action real, I feel like I need to be in it with them to make it feel like it could actually happen.
And then tell me about writing the omniscient narrator, because that character is kind of fabulous. All those thoughts, were those just coming to you?
Well, I didn't know there was going to be a narrator until I started writing the first platform. And I was using just too many words. I was describing everything because when you're trying to describe all the different points of view and what everyone is thinking about one another, I just got very tangled up. And it wasn't what I wanted because it was slowing everything down instead of making everything faster. So I thought, okay, well, what if I just told the reader what's going to happen? And then I can cut like these 20 pages. Let's just say what's going to happen instead of alluding to it. And then once the voice came out that said that someone is going to die here, I thought, oh, there's a voice. And that's really fun. And that voice is very snarky and sarcastic and judgmental. And that's the voice that's going to say everything we want to say, but of course we never would say. And once I saw that that's who was coming to tell us the story, I thought, well, that's going to be really fun. The narrator was really fun to write. Yeah.
Yeah, very snarky. And great. Yeah, there was some place at the end later where you're saying, oh, but you might not want to go there. That could be awkward at your book club. You might want to just and just talk when the Chardonnay and the charcuterie is coming out. Pivot to this easier thing about metaphors.
Yes.
So I'm not asking you about a single metaphor.
Because the narrator knows you too. The narrator knows everyone on the platform. They know everything that's happening. And they also know you. And they also know your book club. And they also know exactly what you're thinking. And that was really fun to write.
That was great. So all 5 characters are complex people who think things they would never say aloud. For example, we heard the Emma thing with Gideon. Mm-hmm. So she thinks for, less than a second how much easier her life would be without him. You said you loved writing the omniscient narrator who exposes those private thoughts. Were there any limitations or things you had to be careful of in that voice?
With the narrator's voice, you mean?
With the omniscient.
Yeah. Actually, over time, the narrator got stronger and stronger. So at first, it was much more of a factual sort of like someone narrating a documentary. But over time, as the characters revealed themselves to me and their stories and who they were going to be, the narrator became judgment. And I actually, rather than limiting, tried to push that judgment as hard as I could to make us as uncomfortable as possible when, facing, like you said, the moral dilemmas about who these people are.
And who you would choose to die and what that says about you. Yeah.
Yes.
So all 5 people on the platform are layered and flawed and hard to love. In the back and forth with your agent and editor, was there ever a push to soften any of them?
Have we softened any of them? I don't think we softened anyone. What might be interesting to tell you, though, is that Mrs. Worth used to be a completely different character. She used to be a nun called Sister Bernadette. And Sister Bernadette was on her way. She's going to London to catch the Eurostar to go to Paris because she's on her way to the funeral of a woman who saved her life. And her whole backstory was about how she was a rebel nun who was part of a convent that had the first underground women's shelter in the 1940s. She was a really extraordinary character. But unfortunately...
Based on a real person?
No, I just, I went to Catholic school as a kid, so I think I have always had sort of Catholic stories in the back of my mind. And my agent said that she She didn't fit. She just didn't, we couldn't, she's a fascinating lady, but we couldn't really relate to her.
Yeah.
And that was hard for me to take, because I spent a lot of time researching nuns. But I think that was exactly the right decision, because Mrs. Worth is that same age, but she's much more contemporary. And I think she's much more relatable, perhaps, to people's own parents or their own grandparents. I think she's much more of our world. Sister Bernadette was a bit too much of a different world. So R.I.P. Sister Bernadette, but hopefully she'll appear again one day.
Exactly.
So Mrs. Worth was a big change. And actually, I love Mrs. Worth. I think she works a lot better. Mrs. Worth is a really interesting, complex person. So in the end, it was the right choice. But I think if anything, we just made sure that everyone's backstories were in alignment, that things were in the right place in the telling of it. But as far as softening them, we didn't do much of that, no.
Can you tell us about Mrs. Worth, a little bit about her, because she is fascinating?
Yes, Mrs. Worth. So she's 78. She's a forensic pathologist. She is on her way to her daughter-in-law's funeral. And that's so we know why she's waiting for the train that day. She did not get along with her daughter-in-law, and she's been estranged from her son and his children as a result of that. And so we start to learn a bit more about her and why she seems so cold and unfeeling and prickly. And when we learn about her childhood, much of which happened in post-war Britain, we start to understand why she has trouble connecting with people. It was also, I liked being able to write about post-war London. The post-war history and the post-war era is so present in the UK. And of course, these are all British characters. I think it's always important to give respect to that history, because it is such a huge part of life in the UK and of a city like London. So Mrs. Worth, we learn that she loses her mother quite young, and she has quite a difficult, complex relationship with her father, which leads her ultimately to pursue this very intense career in forensic pathology and to actually be one of the UK's pioneer women in this particular field.
Doing autopsies.
Doing autopsies, yes. And I will say I have never had an interest in pathology, or I'm very squeamish. I don't enjoy anything around those topics, but it's what Mrs. Worth wanted to do. So she led me down a path of very, I don't want to say gruesome, because I don't want to disrespect the field, because it's actually an extraordinary field that people work in. But for a layperson, it was quite a lot. But I read a fantastic book called Unnatural Causes by, his name's escaping me. I put it in the acknowledgements, but he's the UK's foremost forensic pathologist. And when I actually learned about what that job entails and why it's important, I mean, I just had no idea. That's one of the things I love about writing, is you research these things that you just had no idea about, and it really does blow your mind.
You did a lot of research on different things, also PTSD, right? To do with her father.
Her father,
Yeah.
PTSD from the war.
Just, how long did it take you to research versus write this book?
I tend to do both things at the same time. I'll start writing a character, they'll start telling me what they want to do, and then I'll start kind of interrogating that, like, well, why would she have this relationship with her father? So, okay, if we know the time period when she was born, then he must have been in the war. Okay, well, if he was in the war, then what did he do in the war? And once I figure that out, then I think, okay, well, now we got to go find out about PTSD in World War II veterans and how they dealt with it, because of course it wasn't called that at the time. It's like, dominoes falling, like each thing you find out, you have to then go find out the next thing. And I tend to do those things simultaneously. So I'll come up with a question. Is this plausible for this character to have this job? Okay, well, if it is, then let me find out, the evidence for that. Because I know that readers, if you haven't done your research, readers will know. And they will point it out, and they will put it in a Goodreads review. So it's important to be as careful as possible. I can't say I got it 100% right, but I try very hard to be as exact as I can with the things that I talk about.
And you also studied train platforms and train times. And
yeah. Yes. Yeah. I did a lot of walking up and down the train platform and like closely reading the signs and looking at the paint of the yellow line and how many steps
Oh,
does it
right.
take to get here. And, I found manuals that were available online for different sizes of station in suburban places and the numbers of staff they'll have. I really got into some very
Wow.
intricate detail about the British train system.
And that's while you're writing, sort of simultaneously.
Because I would think like, okay, well, if I say that he's come down the steps and it's how many steps is it to the yellow line, if I'm going to say that. And if I say that this and this happens at the edge of the platform, well, what does the edge of the platform actually look like? So I can make sure that this is right.
Yeah.
That you'll believe me that this is right.
In a podcast interview of yours, someone asked you what sentence you were proud of, what lines you were proud of. Do you remember that? You read something about Mrs. Worth and her daughter-in-law. Do you remember what page that's on? Because that thought just occurred to me now, so I can't help you on the page. But if you could read that.
I do love Mrs. Worth. Hang on, I know where that is. Yeah, I have it here.
Okay. Do you need to tell the listeners anything where we are at that point?
So we're still on the first. We're still at the first train platform. We're finding out why everyone is here taking a train today.
Okay.
So she says, so Mrs. Worth, she's taking the train to London to see her grandsons at her daughter-in-law's funeral. She reckons they have only a vague memory of her if they have one at all. And God knows what her daughter-in-law put into their heads about her over all these years. But they are her son's sons, and the invitation to her daughter-in-law's funeral feels like a step in the right direction for all of them, especially her daughter-in-law.
That was it. Very good. But I loved all your characters, not just Mrs. Worth. Emma, the mother, was also terrific, and the transformation of her, thanks to Gideon, was quite something. So she had always been confident and stylish, and then Gideon's difficult birth and his unrelenting behavior leaves her sleep-deprived, insecure, depressed. She's a changed woman because of Gideon. So we judge mothers so harshly, as if the children misbehaving is the mother's fault. I wanted to ask you what you want readers to see in Emma that we usually refuse to see in real mothers.
Yeah. So Emma sort of represents two things. So the first thing is the way that women can judge each other around their motherhood. So at first, before Emma becomes a mother, she judges all the women around her who are mothers for complaining too much, for being too soft, for finding everything too difficult. And once she becomes a mother, that shifts because suddenly she understands something very different about motherhood. So she represents that friction that can happen between women at that time in their lives when people are having children, when some people are having difficulty having children, when some people are having many children, and then when everyone's judging each other's parenting. So she represents that part. But she also represents, though, a mother who is struggling with a child, and there is the self-blame. She's wondering herself how much of this is her fault, which I think is something that every mother goes through whenever a child is having a challenge. And then she also represents the judgment that we have of parents like her and of children like Gideon, or any kind of child who has a challenge. Gideon has sort of very rare, very specific, very extreme behaviors. But we could be talking about anything. We could be talking about autism, about ADHD, about any number of behaviors and challenges that children might have. So she's doing a big job. She's representing lots of different facets of motherhood, but lots of facets that have to do with the judgment of mothers judging each other, society judging mothers, and then, of course, the most devastating impact is how a mother judges herself and the struggles that mothers go through trying to figure out what to do for their children, particularly when their children have a challenge that feels insurmountable, which you might suspect is your own fault. So she's a lot of mothers rolled into a package, which is also not particularly empathetic. Like it's quite hard. I think mothers who read Emma, they will sympathize with her while at the same time sort of struggling to like her.
Yeah, I empathized with her, definitely.
Yeah.
He's difficult. And then you had the totally different mother, Sonny. Sonny's got ADHD. He's super energetic. Yeah. I'm just guessing what he has. Yeah. And then his mother just thinks that everything he does, I mean, he's easier than Gideon, but everything he does is fabulous. And she just really believes in him. Is Luna, are you sort of, in a way, are you giving an example of how mothers might, the ideal mother for a child that's challenging?
So the Sunny and Luna story to me are the closest sort of to my own heart. My sons both have ADHD, like I said, and dyslexia, and they are very energetic and full of life and questions. And we have been on a journey. They're both teenagers now, but we have certainly been on a journey through the educational system and through the medical system in trying to sort out what the best solutions for them are. So Luna represents, it's not necessarily the ideal mother. It's more like she represents a mother trying to protect her child from a world that isn't made for him. She's trying to protect her child from being misunderstood and from being judged. So often kids like him, one of two things can happen at school. They can be uplifted and upheld for their wonderful talents and for the extraordinary things that they're capable of and for their very different ways of thinking and being. Or they can be put in a corner for not conforming, doing everything wrong, never remembering anything, not being the model student. Because they can't. They actually can't. So in our lives, we've experienced both kinds of encounters with authority. Those who want to uphold these kids and can see there's something different going on are going to figure out every way to accommodate it. And those who just don't, who think all children need to conform and this is how we do school and all of this stuff about neurodiversity is a trend. And so as a mother of children who are neurodiverse, I think it's just very important to send a message that, you can either help us and you can either help us uplift these children and make them the very best that they can be, or you can be judgmental and you can think that everything we're doing is wrong and that we're just too soft and permissive. Either way, mothers like Luna are going to defend those kids to the very end. And whether you're with us or not, our job is there and we're going to do it. So you can get on the, train or not.
Your author's note.
Yeah.
It was, when you say get out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're not on it.
If you're not going to help, then you can have any opinion you want, but just if you're not going to help, then we don't need you here. Yeah. So I think it's important to cast light on it and just to say, if you've not had an experience with neurodiverse people, but you can see what parents are struggling with children, then please be kind. It doesn't matter if you understand it or not. Just be kind. That's really important for me to say.
Because they remember it.
And it wears them down.
Okay. You were trained as a lawyer in the U.S. and a solicitor in the U.K. before you made writing your full-time career. You said practicing law is good training for writing briefs and hard evidence, telling a story. What's the lawyer instinct that still shows up in your prose?
Oh, yeah. So definitely the research that is that came from law school. And I approach the story as a case. I approach it like the characters are my clients. I know that I need to convince you that this could be real and that the things happening between them could happen. So I need to make sure that I have found every detail and plugged every hole and found every piece of evidence to prove to you that this could be real.
Interesting.
I know, it's fiction. It's all
Yeah.
made up. But
Yeah.
I feel very much like the characters are all sitting with me and I'm their advocate. And I'm trying to convince you of the rightness or wrongness of their situations, or just to ask you to accept these people as who they are. But I am, as I'm, when I write, I'm definitely advocating for these stories.
So tell me now, are you working on another psychological thriller? Are you taking a break?
No, I've started working on another book. I have some other characters who would like to make themselves known. So I am working on that. It's kind of always in the back of my mind. It's the funny thing about writing. I know that people often think that like writing is spending, 4 hours a day locked in a room in silence or in a cafe with a lovely coffee, just writing great thoughts. For me, it doesn't really work that way. I'm constantly thinking about them. And, I'm a mom, I've got family, I'm running a household. So when the times do come when I can sit and write, I've been doing so much work in my head while doing laundry and dishes and taking care of kids and whatever it is, that I can sit down and do it when those blocks of time come. They don't always come. They're not very regular at the moment. I'm talking about 5 and promoting and doing those things.
Yeah.
But I have some people living in my head. So as soon as I was
going to say, so the voices just kind of, they just snap too, because you're thinking about them all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm always sort of listening to a book or listening to a podcast, or I'm immersed in some story, because I feel like if you feed your subconscious, it will start to weave things together.
A story that relates to what you want to write about.
Not necessarily. Sometimes I delve into different kinds of stories because I'm looking for different aspects of characters, and I'm trying to, figure out why people behave the way they do. It's kind of like studying psychology. Like I don't think I would ever write a book about like a cult, but I've listened to lots of cult podcasts because understanding the psychology of what makes someone a leader and what makes other people follow, that's really helpful for a writer to know when you're writing characters. So it's that kind of, I'm always doing like, why do people behave the way they do sort of research.
Okay, well, that's it for my questions. Now, the film. 5 is now becoming a film. Who would you?
I'm terrible with celebrities. So we need, well, I will say this, on the audiobook, we have got a like stellar cast of actors. And so Juliet Stevenson, who is an iconic British actress.
Is she playing Mrs. Worth?
She's the voice of Mrs. Worth.
Oh, because I haven't listened to it yet. Oh, great!
Yeah,
I saw someone
audio.
said the cast was amazing.
Yes. Yeah. She's the voice on the audio, which is wonderful. I haven't heard it yet, but I'm sure that she's absolutely perfect.
Yeah. Oh, great.
I'm sure she's absolutely perfect.
So she could she could play her. Yeah.
Yeah. I think she could, because she's just phenomenal. I think all the characters have a very specific look. So we would really need to work hard. I mean, like Liam has such a specific
gap
look. Yeah. Gap between his teeth. So we need a sort of beefy, hunky, bald man. I mean, I also made him bald sort of in tribute to my own bald husband, because I think it's important to also honor the bald men. So we need sort of a beefy, hunky, bald man. Who is a popular one now?
God, you know what? I'm bad too, and I told my husband that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, and he's like, "Oh, I don't know any film stars." So it is hard if you're not a celebrity person. It sounds like the 3 of us aren't. I always just say, what is it? Elle Fanning, but I actually don't see her in this one, but just an easy one to just grab.
I think Emma Stone would be an amazing Emma. I'm not sure how old she is, if she's old enough, but I think she would be an amazing Emma.
Yeah, Emma Stone's a great actress. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Gideon, he's got to have the gap teeth too, in his teeth too.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure there's any number of, it would be such a great part for a talented kid. I think there's probably any number of children who could do it. I just watched Lord of the Flies, the new Lord of the Flies on BBC. They just did a remake, and child actors are extraordinary. They are extraordinary. So I'm sure there's any number of kids who would do a great job with that. It's hard to imagine, it's such a different art form. The audio as well, like audio is such a different art form. It's very exciting to see sort of the transition of how something goes from paper to a different medium.
Were you involved in the audio?
No, what they do is they ask you, you listen to some voices so you can get an idea of who everyone is. And then they ask you your opinion, but everything else sort of goes on. And then suddenly there's a wonderful piece of audio. So I'm excited to listen.
Thank you so much, Ilona. I think
Thank you.
This book is going to be a huge hit.
Oh, thank you so much.
It's really good.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode with Ilona Bannister. I can't recommend this book highly enough. Notice also, it's not too long, which I loved. I read it in a weekend. It's different than any other book I've read or included on my podcast. Ilona is a brilliant writer. She takes an everyday occurrence, people waiting for a train, and makes us go deeper. Who are these people? What are their stories? And by telling us on page 1 that someone is going to die, well, I was hooked. And I think you will be too. So thanks for listening. See you in 2 weeks. Bye.